Okay, that's under control. Hello. 2 people are watching with us.
It's always a new ball game every time, huh?
That's right.
What's going on?
Not sure. I think your device is slow today.
Yeah. And dying internet.
Yep. Okay, it says I'm going live. Let's see. There we go. Now I'm moving again. Swipe left, reveal comments. Steve Allerton is out there. Hi, Steve. Rose Spinks as well. 12 people are in the room. I think we can get going. Hi, everyone. This is our online old time jam. This is not a concert. We hope you're playing along, getting your instruments tuned up to jam with us.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say to
absolutely.
that effect? We're going to start in the key of D.
D.
If you didn't get that memo earlier, I've got my fiddle tuned to standard tuning, but if you're in the high bass tuning that sometimes old-time fiddlers prefer for D, that ought to work for a lot of what we're doing here, but I'll be in G, D, A, E for this portion of the program. You're going to stay uncapoed.
Uncapoed for D and capoed for A.
Yep, we'll give you warning when it's time to change.
Yeah, and my usual disclaimer that I play an A with one finger. For those of you who are joining for the first time, I use one, so that's an A position. And I tend to move my fingers around a lot, but I'll do my best to hold the chord shapes and stuff. And we're going to do a couple of things a little bit different in this one. We're going to have a couple waltzes. We've had requests for waltzes, and so we've come up with a couple.
That's right.
One we think is pretty familiar, and the other one maybe not. And it's one of my ultimate favorite tunes. The one that's a little less familiar. So we're looking forward to doing that. And something we wanted to do is we don't usually do things like this, but this particular jam we want to dedicate to a friend of ours who left us this week, who was a really huge and influential member of the old time community, and we just want to send this jam out in recognition of him. That's to right. Rusty Nighthammer.
That's right. Sorry he left us soon. All right, let's kick this off with a good Midwestern tune, as far as I know, called Gilsaw. Can I hear that D, please? Okay, jam along, please.
was so popular when it seemed like right before the pandemic.
Yeah, sure was.
And it was like the tune of the festival.
Yep.
It seemed like right before then, so
It was ubiquitous.
Yeah, we thought we'd bring it back out again. Where's it from? You think it's Midwestern?
Well, I think Chirp Smith put it on that Midwestern Harvest album from a long time ago. Maybe that's where I first heard it, or elsewhere from Chirp Smith. And then didn't Reese Jones and Bigfoot record it maybe more recently?
Yeah, maybe so, yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Don't quote us on that. But it's been getting around. We're having problems with our monitor over here. The comments are coming in still, but see, the video isn't moving. Let me try restarting it once more. And if it still fails, we'll just have to not get disconcerted by the frozen video.
Right.
Right?
Well, or you could use my phone for comments.
Oh, I don't know. I think the large format might be a must for me. Okay, it's moving again. It moves for a while. Nice to see everybody out there. Sue McKay is here with us.
We got waltzes, Sue.
Yes. Did Sue want waltzes?
What did Sue want waltzes?
Lori wanted
waltzes.
waltzes.
Sorry. Never mind.
Sue,
maybe you want waltzes
we
too.
hope you want waltzes.
Sorry.
Sarah Salzberg is out there. Hi,
Hey, Sarah.
Robin Willis.
Hey, Robin.
Hello, Robin. All right, let's play another number. This is an oldie, but I think a goodie. And if you've been involved with old-time music for a long time, you might remember this from the way back days. This is one version of the many versions of Dusty Miller, but I think it's the only one that's not in A. Aren't the others all A or kind of A-modal?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, this is the D Dusty Miller.
Well, this is the first one I ever learned.
Right, it was the first one I ever learned too. And if I remember correctly, this goes back to Frank George from West Virginia. Yeah. And it's one of those that used to be played around all the time, but you never hear anymore. So we're bringing it back around.
So I have a trivia question. So, animal, vegetable, or mineral, Dusty Miller?
Ooh, that's a good question. Think on that and let us know in the chat if you know the answer.
Was it a person?
Right.
Is it a thing? What?
Do you know the answer?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I do.
I have an idea, but I won't put it out there yet. Now, this has the usual 1, 4, 5, D, G, and A, as well as an outlier. It's got a 7 chord in the A part, and that'll be the C shape, right? Yep. Good.
And it goes to the 2.
That's the 5.
Excuse me.
Nope, just the 7.
The 7. Just the 7 and okay.
And the usual suspects.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
You'll hear it when the 7 comes around. All right, here we go.
As easy as some.
No, it's a tricky little tune, isn't it?
I have a suggestion. Why don't you, excuse us for the technological things here, why don't you turn the Wi-Fi off and on?
On this device?
Yes,
okay.
On the settings.
I mean, the comments are still coming in. Let us know if you're having streaming issues like this other device seems to be doing. Rose confirms that Bigfoot did record Gilsaw.
Thanks you,
for
Rose.
that, Rose.
Yeah.
Terry Andrews is out there. Hi, Terry.
Hey, Terry.
John Beaker, hello.
Hey, John.
So glad you could tune in.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Terry Burdick, hi Terry, says it's a plant she thinks. Does that count as vegetable? Catherine says it's ragwort. Catherine has it.
Now that I didn't know.
In a garden. Let's see. Robin Willis says Dusty Miller is an ice cream chocolate sundae topped with malted milk.
In California?
Or in Rhode Island, maybe?
Or in Rhode Island.
That's pretty cool.
Not in the South, I don't think. Maybe not Virginia.
Okay. So what is the answer you had in mind?
It's a plant.
Okay.
It's silver.
Uh-huh.
The plant is silver, so they use it in the garden for color.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Does it have a fuzzy texture?
It's fuzzy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Dusty Miller. How about that? Brendan is here. Hi, Brendan.
Hey,
he
Brendan.
says no streaming problems, so it must just be something funny with this device.
Brendan.
But let me try the settings. Brendan?
Yeah, just...
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where your settings are.
I
have no idea where...
Wait.
Where the settings could be.
I don't know.
Okay.
Go back to it then.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're just stuck.
Sorry for the technology thing. It's just been strange. Actually, at my office this week, they're building a new interchange very near my office on the highway. And the other day, they set the fiber optics that come to our office, fiber optic line that comes to our office on fire. Yeah. So we didn't have to work today because of that.
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me. Yeah.
Hilarious.
So sorry, but anyway, we're not the world's best technology people. So.
No, but as long as this version of the technology is working properly, then I guess we don't need to be so worried.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do another tune that I associate with Chirp Smith, and that I assume is from the Midwest, since so much of Chirp's repertoire is, but let me know if we're wrong about that. This is Run Down Boot, and I first heard Chirp's play this on that Clifftop Tribute CD that we've mentioned in this context in the past. It's just such a great album, and if you can find a copy of it out there somewhere, you should get it. It's no longer in print, and I hope that the Field Recorders Collective or somebody will reissue it at some point, but Chirps was on there playing Run Down Boot in his beautiful way, and it's just stuck with me ever since. Let us know if one part of this tune reminds you of another part of a different tune.
And then we'll discuss that a little further.
We'll discuss that a little further when we're done, that's right. No surprises with Run Down Boot. It kind of goes where you expect. torn up shoe.
Right. It's something about the Midwest. They sing a lot of shoe songs.
Yeah, they do. Isn't that funny?
Heel come a dragon. But wasn't there something about this
There was.
tune?
There was. Does it remind anybody of any other tune?
Yeah.
No one has said so in the comments.
Mention in the comments, did you hear any other really familiar tune in that? Maybe in the B part.
Right, the B part of this one. Especially that section.
Especially that
remind
part,
you of
yeah.
anything? Well, it reminds us a whole lot of the A part of Liberty. And one of Beth's magical powers is being able to hear likely tune medleys, associate two tunes with each other because of some quality in both of them. She's really, really good at it. This is maybe one of the more obvious examples, but she does it kind of every time. A medley could be conceived of. She does conceive of it, and she makes the right call.
I think seriously it's because the way that I do tunes is that they have to be in my head. I have to be able to sing them in my head, and so if you got it in your head rather than watching it on a piece of paper or something like that, then the correlations come together.
That's right.
A little better.
So we thought, just for fun, we'd demonstrate how you might try stitching the two tunes together. If you have occasion to play for dances ever, like we used to do, it's always handy to have some medleys ready to go, or at least be comfortable moving from one tune to another tune without having to stop and think in between. We tried it both ways, rundown boot into Liberty, Liberty into rundown boot. We like Liberty into rundown boot better because that keeps the similar part in the two tunes from being side by side. But you could do it the other way around too. So we'll just do once through each one.
Yeah, just to give you an idea what it's like. Yeah.
Right? Just for fun.
Than we usually do, but we have fun with medleys, and
we sure do.
Not something you want to sit around and do, in just any jam session, but it can be fun.
Yep.
With your closest friends and relatives.
All right, Kristen from Kansas is out there,
Kristen.
and she guessed Liberty. Yes. And Terry Burdick said it reminded her of the one we mentioned. Couldn't remember the name. Liberty. There we go. Yeah. Sure enough. Aw, my sister Greta is out there watching.
Hey, Greta.
Hi, Greta. Love you. All right. And if I'm missing comments, please forgive me because the video on the monitor is frozen again, and I don't think some of the chat is displaying correctly either. But we will read through it all when we're done with the jam, and we appreciate you all keeping one another company in the chat, even if we're not always there with you.
So this next one, we got sort of a semi-request to do this one, sort of, kind of.
Sort of. I'm excited about it, too.
But I ramped up the request because Adam springs this tune on me when I have not practiced it and I have not listened to it or anything else, and I wanted to finally get it down because it's harder than it seems. And if I get it all right this time, I'll be really happy because we've been practicing it. But it's not the simplest. You want to talk about how you
Yeah, I
hold
will.
that part a little bit.
I
yeah.
will. This is going to be Jack,
Jack
Wilson
Wilson.
from John Salyer of Kentucky, one of our favorite historical fiddlers. And this is one of my favorite tunes of his to teach on the banjo. It's a perfect introduction to a certain maneuver that I think is kind of an essential part of a clawhammer banjo player's toolkit. So this is the tune that I like to use to teach that move. Sorry I don't have the banjo in here with me, but if you've taken banjo lessons from me, you probably experienced this tune all that you care to imagine. But it's real nice on fiddle and the guitar too, and yet we hardly hear anybody playing it
Probably
this
because
way.
it's hard.
Well, I don't think it's
hard.
that bad here. The chords are
the
weird.
The chords are weird, yeah.
It's just 1, 4, and 5, but the
there's
placement of them is
There's no
strange.
unusual chords, but just the placement and the timing is odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of ways that I've heard people attempt to chord it, but I haven't heard many people kind of settle on something. I think, again, because it just doesn't seem to get played much in jams. So, should we go through it just real slowly, maybe, and talk about the chords, or just play it?
Sure.
Or maybe I can warn them of the surprise at the end of the parts.
Okay.
Okay, we don't need to play it through slowly. We
Okay.
won't play it too fast.
Okay.
Until we're ready to end for good, and we'll give you warning about that, neither part is going to resolve. We're playing in the key of D, but those two parts, A and B, will leave us hanging on the 5 chord, the A chord,
Right.
rather than coming back around to D like you'd expect.
That's in case, unless I forget.
Right.
Which I'm bad about forgetting
It
in
could
that
happen.
part, so it could happen.
It
but-
could happen. There's a lot of beautiful 4 chord, and in fact, the B part is anchored by the 4 chord. B part starts on the 4, on the G, and doesn't have any 1 in it at all. So let's see what happens. The B part is half the length of the A as well. Blah, blah, blah. Too much talking, not enough playing. Jack Wilson, I'm so excited that we're playing this finally. Make it count. waiting that whole time. Jack Wilson, isn't that fun? What do you think of that chord progression? We hope you like it.
Well,
you did a great job.
Well, I just wanted to say that we've been practicing that all week, and I still managed to do chords that I was hearing in my head instead of the chords that Adam had asked for. So anyway, it doesn't matter how much you practice; you still takes forever to get.
There are a lot of chords that work.
And there are a lot of chords.
There really are
a lot of chords. And the other thing I wanted to say about that is that Adam said the source person, right? John Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But the Wandering Ramblers did an excellent version of that on their tape from like the 80s,
the
late
80s or
80s.
early 90s.
But
And I
Ramblers,
think these chords are what they played, or real close to what they played, because that's the ensemble version that has stuck in my craw.
Yeah, that was Carol Elizabeth Jones playing guitar on
Yeah.
that one.
You know, that Wandering Ramblers album got
so
reissued as a Bandcamp download not all that long ago, in the past couple of years. And I think Carol Elizabeth Jones was posting about that, maybe made it happen.
If you don't have it,
see if it's still out there on Bandcamp.
I think I've gone through like 3 copies of that tape.
Yeah.
I wore it out.
And I don't think it ever did come out on CD.
I don't think it
went
did.
straight from cassette to not being available and to now finally being on
Wonderful,
Bandcamp. So
cassette.
good. All right, Nikki from Ohio has tuned in. This is exciting. She tuned in just in time to hear Rundown Boot, which she has been working so hard on in her banjo lessons.
Nice.
Kudos to you, Nikki, for sticking with that, and I hope you were playing along, maybe just in your head if you just tuned in.
So it seems like we're doing several that were hits of the festival some years ago.
Yeah.
So this one was about 10 years ago.
Yep.
It was the hit of the festival.
And it's got a lovely title, Jonah in the Windstorm. We learned this from Claire Milliner and Walt Koken, and I can't remember where they said they got it. If you know, let us know in the comments.
Let us know. We try our best to know the sources, but
we don't always.
We
usually know our sources.
We appreciate input.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me come up just a little bit. Jonah and the Windstorm.
And this is not a real fast tune.
No, kind of low-beat. Isn't that fun?
Is there a story in the Bible about Jonah and a windstorm?
I think there is. I think I looked that up.
Was that before the whale ate him?
Yeah, that could be.
I guess it would have to be. I don't know.
Unless it were Jonah inside the whale in the windstorm.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
I think I Googled that back when we first heard the tune.
Did you? And there is a Bible
title. Yeah. All right, we're going to do one more in the key of D, and then we're going to gradually reconfigure the instruments for A, and I'll coach you on that in a moment. But this last one in D is real fun, and we're pretty excited about it too. It's called Sister Anne, and it's not a common tune, but it's closely related to a very common tune. This is a derivative, I guess, of Ragtime Annie. That's what I was always told, and you can hear it in there. But the form is very different, and certain things are more complex, other things are less complex. On the guitar, in a way, it's less complex. Only 2 chords, the 1 and the 5. And I don't like many tunes that omit the 4 chord.
You usually add some.
Yeah, I force the 4 chord in, or I just don't play them. But this tune just has so much else going on, I don't even miss that 4 chord.
And one of the things that is really, really important for the guitar is to, for the left hand particularly, is to play it a staccato sound with this thing. So you achieve staccato by raising and lowering the pressure, or I like to call it choking the guitar.
Gives it a lot of drive.
And it gives it some drive. So,
and it's something more that you can do when there aren't that many chords being called for.
Right, right. So if you just played it straight, play just a hair of it. So that would be straight, and then. That's what we're looking for, and that gives it, that kind of cures the just 2 chord problem.
Yep, it does. Let's talk a little bit about the form before we actually jump right in and play it. I'm not keeping up with these comments, and I think they're still not displaying quite right. Although, Brendan chimed in, I'm so glad you did. Brendan always associates Sister Anne with Kirk
Sutphin. Exactly.
Me too.
Me too.
I don't really know anybody else who plays
I've never
the
heard
tune.
anybody else play it, but he plays the heck out of it.
He
Did
does.
he record it?
He did.
Okay.
And that's what I kind of base my playing of it on. So if you haven't heard Kirk Sutphin play Sister Anne, you should go track down that recording. It's really a good one. So we've got
I
parts.
always think of it, Sister Anne and Sweet Little Julie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of sister tune, as it were.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We've got an A part that's short, and it's the one that sounds like a little bit of Ragtime Annie. And it repeats. Then we have a B part that's twice the length of that one, like a standard length part. And it repeats. Then there's a third part that's a lot like the A part, but it's an octave higher. And it repeats. And then there's a fourth part that's standard length. It's the longer part, but it only happens once.
And you really, and in this part, you really want to ham it up on the
yeah,
guitar.
drama is good.
Drama's good in this part.
1, 2, 3. And then it doesn't repeat. You go back to the Ragtime Annie thing.
So for a 2-chord tune, it's kind of complicated.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
We hope you'll enjoy playing along with us on Sister Anne. And if you get the parts out of order, just wait a moment, and the one you're expecting to hear will come back around.
It's a 4-part, 2-chord tune.
That's right. Isn't that funny? Thanks, Kirk Sutphin, for inspiring us. We love it.
Yeah.
Terry Burdick, if you're still out there, haven't we enjoyed playing that one together, like right in this next room? I sort of associate you with it. Also known as Bug and the Tater Patch, Terry thinks. And I remember somebody else sharing that title with us. Maybe Kenny Rohrer told us that's what it's called. Maybe. Hi, Jackie Spector.
Hey, Jackie Spector.
Jackie says Sister Ann was one the Bobcats played, and they too got it from Kirk.
Yeah.
Cool.
Y'all also did Sweet Little Julie, which makes me think of each other.
That's right. Richard Eddy is out there. Richard likes that tune and has to learn it, he says. Hope you do, Richard. Hope we get to hear you play it. All right. Beth just stuck her capo on, getting ready for A, but you'll notice I haven't started cranking the fiddle pegs yet. We're going to ease into A via a waltz that was recorded in standard tuning, and there's one really beautiful interval in it, that sounds good, that I don't believe can be gotten in the cross tuning. So I'm doing it in standard. Fiddlers, don't be afraid if you're used to crossing up for A. You too will be able to play this in standard. If I can play it in standard, you can play it in standard. Trust me, I can hardly play in the key of A without retuning the whole fiddle, but this plays well there.
I will say that we're both still learning this tune, so it's not very fancy yet. We want it to be.
We want it to be, yeah.
But we're not there yet, but just keep working on it. We got this from Norman Blake, and it's on the Rising Falling String Ensemble.
Right, and I guess James
CD.
Bryan was the fiddler on that. I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah.
It's called the El Paso Waltz.
Yeah.
We don't know anything about it other than that recording. So
it is one of the most beautiful waltzes I've ever heard.
it's real nice. And there's a 2 minor on the guitar. So let's review your 1 4 5. 1 4. Yeah, 5. Yeah, usual shapes, G, C, D, but then that 2 minor is the A minor shape. And it's going to happen in conjunction with the 4 chord. And I believe both parts A and B are chorded the same way.
No.
Not quite?
Not quite.
Okay.
But very similar. He used to be a fellow in the Gaelic scene. I know Jackie Spector will know who I'm talking about, and maybe some other folks that could play waltzes so beautifully on the guitar, and it is my goal to try to emulate some of the way he played, which was Bobby Patterson.
Yeah.
There was a recording of a waltz called the Gaelic Waltz with Greg Hooven as fiddler, and Bobby Patterson was a guitar player, and it's just like perfection.
Yes.
So one day I get this down.
Yeah.
Like that, maybe.
And thanks to one of our most loyal online jam participants, Lori from Brooklyn, for suggesting that we bring more waltzes into our program. So we'll send this one out to you, Lori. Hope you're out there jamming with us. Not too fast. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. one, isn't it?
If I play it in the car, I have it on replay. Replay.
Right.
I never listen to the rest of the CD at all.
I don't think I've heard the rest of the CD either.
Have you?
I should.
You probably should, yeah.
All right, now I'm cranking the fiddle up and fully committing to the key of A, and if you fiddlers out there like to do that too, this would be a good time to do it. I'm going into AEAE from low to high. Beth is going to stay right where she is with the capo at the 2nd fret, where you prefer to play in the key of A too.
Right.
Everybody out there having fun?
Always play key of A there.
This
Any
monitor is
commentary?
still not working quite right, but there's some comments coming in, and we appreciate them. Thank you. We look forward to reviewing everything there later on. Can I hear your chord, please?
Well, as usual, I don't know the source for this, but I know where I heard it.
I know the source for this.
We make a good team. Adam knows the source, and I know the people who've recorded it in modern days.
Right, the young folks.
The young fogies, yeah.
We tune because we care, and just want to double check one thing here. Better. All right, we're going to play kind of a friendly tune here that a lot of people know.
So who's the source?
This is Dinah. And the source that I know for it is Henry Reed from Virginia.
Yes. Source I know for it is Troublesome Creek.
Troublesome Creek with fiddler Rick Martin. He sure played a great version of it on that CD too. Any fans of Rick Martin's fiddling out there? Yeah. Steve Arkin played the banjo in that band.
Lori and Dick Harrington.
That's right. If you don't have the Troublesome Creek album, you should check
another one of those you'll wear out.
So much good singing on there too.
Yes. And playing. It was a fine album.
All right, here's some Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah, I suppose. sorry to mislead you. That's a tune that I teach my banjo students very often, and I felt us both start to get carried away with the tempo, and I was picturing the panicked looks on all of those banjo students' faces because I know some of them are out there right now.
Well, and also the catalog of looks that I get, sometimes it means you're not playing the right chord, you're not going to the right place, you're too fast or whatever, and I was having trouble interpreting which one it was.
It's all good.
But, you know, since I learned it from the Troublesome Creek, they play it like
so
100 miles an hour.
I don't know how they did it.
It's hard to keep it slow.
It is.
It really is.
Yes.
So.
Let me get a little better in tune with you, and then we'll talk about the next one, another John Salyer number.
Yeah, Jack Wilson's the same way. It's really hard to play.
It wants to go a lot faster.
That's really fast.
All right, we're going to do Trouble in Mind from John Salyer. We were visiting friends recently who brought this tune up in a jam session, and we've both known it for a long time, but never think to play it. And we were both so excited when it got called in the jam because it was fun to play it again, and we were collecting possible tunes for this online jam, and we both said, oh, that's one we've got to put in. Trouble in Mind is a little bit crooked, so we're not going to play it too fast, the better for everyone to feel like they have a chance to follow along. The B part is the squarer of the two. The first B part, I think, is totally square. Second B part is a little short at the end. It's like the A part starts up early, but the A part is stranger than that. So Beth's chording is going to help organize the shape of that part. And if you don't already know this tune and you're playing an instrument that can do chords, and fiddles can kind of do chords if the player wants them to, maybe follow Beth's lead more than mine on that A part, especially before things start to get squared up. Trouble in Mind. get tangled up in that 8-part crookedness.
Well,
Hopefully not unresolvedly.
When we started working on it the other night, my hand automatically wanted to go to the 7.
Right.
Automatically.
Some people put that in there.
But we didn't do that. So, but I still have trouble keeping my hand from wanting to go there. And the other thing that's a lot of fun to do with the right hand is to just drone it. Make it sound like a bagpipe drone.
Kind of like what I do on the fiddle in the B part. Doesn't need too much.
No, it doesn't. It gives the drama to a tune, if you ask me.
Speaking of drama, let me hear that string, please. Might be time to change my E string. Well, all right, you want to talk about this next one?
The next tune is going to check a lot of boxes. It's going to be kind of a kitchen sink kind of tune. Number one is we're hoping that it's a very familiar tune to a lot of people. Second of all, it's a round peak tune. Third of all, it's a wonderful singing tune. And fourth of all, it is one of the best tunes there is, at least for guitar players. Is it true for fiddlers? To try every last...
Yeah. You can do so much with it.
You can throw in every last technique, run, thought you ever had into this tune and experiment with it. And it's just it's just ideal for that. This kind of run, that kind of run, this kind of stroke, and so on and so on. So just consider it as the world's best practice tune, and even including singing. And
you're going to sing just one of the verses, but if you all know more, keep singing.
Feel free.
We'll imagine what you're saying.
Which time are we going to sing?
I'll indicate, but maybe the third time we'll see what happens. This is going to be John Hardy. John Hardy. Desperate Little Man. Right. Important. Starts on the 4 chord. If you know the folk song John Hardy, I mean, it's just the same thing with a little bit more rhythm, I suppose.
If you want to hear the world's, besides Tommy Gerald, who can sing this song better than anybody, is Riley Boggess. So if you ever get a chance to hear Riley Boggess sing this too,
good to know.
Get him to do it.
We're going to see him next week at Banjo Camp North.
Yeah.
Are we going to see any of y'all at Banjo Camp North?
Hope so.
All right, and not too fast. We can't get carried away.
Right.
Just fast enough.
see why Round Pig is, hits people's hearts so much.
Oh, yeah.
That tune is amazing.
It's infectious.
I mean, very
music,
infectious indeed.
for sure.
So,
All right, thinking of Round Peak down in North Carolina, we're going to play another North Carolina tune, but not from Round Peak, not from anywhere near Round Peak, or really any place that a lot of people associate with this kind of music.
Moore County, North Carolina.
Much farther east. You want to talk about
Southeast.
this?
Well, this tune is from a banjo player that lived in Moore County, North Carolina, Sanford, if you know town names in North Carolina. And he was a North Carolina Heritage Award winner and had been playing banjo all his life, played some fiddle as well. And all of his tunes were taught to him by his Uncle Henry. And he did a recording on Rounder back in the 80s, in which he played all the tunes that his Uncle Henry had taught him, and had various people playing along with him and stuff like that. Bob Carlin recorded the CD, and this tune is one of the tunes from there.
Yeah.
So, and if you listen to the CD and listen to this tune, you can hear me laughing right when it first starts, because Bob Carlin was doing something really weird or something, or making faces in the kitchen or something, and I just started laughing at him. And then
You were the guitarist on
Yes.
this tune, in other
Yes.
words. I think that was the 90s, wasn't it?
late 80s or early 90s.
Really?
Well, maybe,
Yeah,
was it?
I think it was.
Oh, well. See?
When you were about 5,
Right.
in any case.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. The early days of my playing.
Early days of your playing,
Right,
that's
right,
right. This is the Boatman Song, and
Yeah,
that's
it's-
really what Marvin called it, and I guess that's what his
It's
Uncle
what's
Henry
called
called
up-
it.
it's what's
And it
called
doesn't
on the
have
CD.
anything to do with boatman or boatsman or
any of
boatman
those.
dance or
It's
any of
just
that. The Boatman
Boatman
Song.
Song is
But it
is
doesn't
the
have
name of
any
it.
lyrics.
No, it has no, not that I know of.
What a
And,
strange title.
Marvin had a lot of lyrics to some of his other tunes, but not this one
Mhm.
that I knew of. But one of the hallmarks of this tune is that it has a very distinct little pause between the A and B parts.
Between the B and the A.
B and the A.
Yeah, when you get ready to restart, just take a little breath.
And then jump into
Yep.
it. Yeah. And it's a kind of happy little tune.
I wish my tuning could be better, but I think that's the best it's going to get. All right.
Ready?
Song. Isn't that kind of an odd little tune?
Yeah,
Odd,
I should know the answer to this, but I don't.
Uh-huh.
Was he a 2-finger or 3-finger player?
2.
He was a 2-finger
He
player.
played with thumb and 1 finger.
Right.
And if I remember right, it was almost like upside down claw hammer. He used his index finger picking up to do what clawhammer players would strike down with the index or middle, and I think his thumb was always on the 5th string. I don't think he did any kind of drop thumb.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think he did either. Look, it was like that sort of look. But that CD has a lot of tunes on it that or nobody else plays them, and I'm familiar with. Lachlan Shaw, who was from the same part of the country, and Marvin played with him some. He might have done some of those tunes. But they're pretty unique, so if you're looking for some different kind of tunes from Piedmont, North Carolina, Marvin Gasser, Uncle Henry's favorites.
That's right. The Boatman Song.
The Boatman Song.
Love it. Paul Harnick stopped by. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we're going to play one more tune, but before we do, I just want to show you why we're sort of struggling over here. This is what the iPad has been looking like.
All night.
Yeah, pretty much all night. And sometimes the comments show up and sometimes they don't. But it's just totally frozen. And when I restarted it earlier, it just froze again in another spot. So who knows what's going on?
So
I love technology when it works right.
Maybe by the fall when we start up again.
Yeah, that's right.
Have it straightened out.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just some housekeeping. This is our last online old time jam of the season. Now that the festivals are getting started for the summer, we're going to be at some of them. We're going to be at some teaching camps as well, and people's schedules are just a little haywire for getting together online like this. But if people still want online old-time jams in the fall, we're happy to come back with more. We're not out of tunes yet.
No.
Hopefully we'll learn some new tunes this
summer. Yeah, I hope so.
So stay tuned literally and figuratively for an announcement of the resumption of this.
Probably September.
I
Probably
imagine.
September.
Yeah, for sure.
So
we hope we'll see you at some of the festivals and camps too.
If any of you are looking for festivals to go to, Dale Morris, who's on Facebook, publishes a very comprehensive list of festivals to go to, not just the big ones.
In the Southeast, I think it's
in the Southeast.
Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, maybe Tennessee.
Oh, and I'm going to put in a plug for one of the festivals in particular.
Oh, yeah.
The Tennessee Valley Fiddlers Convention in Athens, Alabama.
Which might not be on Dale's list.
It might not be. But it's in northern Alabama. It's near Huntsville. And it is a fantastic contest, and they don't get a whole lot of contestants.
Right.
Which is why I'm bringing it up, because they have a very nice slate of prizes, and they have very interesting, they have folk singing and
lots of
dance and many categories. They do Texas-style fiddling and old-time style, no bluegrass.
Not fiddle, but they have bluegrass on the other instruments too. They have bluegrass and old-time banjo, bluegrass mandolin. They have flat-picking guitar, so quasi-bluegrass, and they also have finger-picking guitar, which is interesting, I think.
And it's and they usually bring in national acts as well to perform. It's a 3-day event, and the competition is all on Saturday.
Right.
Right.
A little bit on Friday
Maybe a
night,
tiny bit
but
on
mainly
Friday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
But we're friends with some of the organizers, and that event just holds a good place in our heart from a long time ago, and we will be down there enjoying it, but not entering contests this fall. And we'd love to see more musicians come down and cross the stage, because the prize money is there, really. It's generous. You can enter as many categories as you want, which is different from a lot of fiddlers' conventions.
And it's not a new festival. It's been going on for decades, a very long time. And we understand that James Bryan won the Fiddle Prize one year, so because he lived fairly close by. So anyway, if y'all are looking for a new one to go to, or you know anyone who lives in Alabama, Georgia area down there,
or Tennessee,
it's close to Nashville.
Yeah, just a couple hours south of Nashville. Alabama just isn't as far away from other things as you might think.
Right.
We like Alabama a lot.
Right. And we've always been treated so well at that festival. So anyway, just thought we'd give it a little plug, because that's not one that everybody knows about.
That's right. Come on down. If you're interested, I've linked tip tip jars to the top of the chat. We have a PayPal and a Venmo option. If you're so inclined, feel free. Thank you all for joining us for this online Old Time Jam and for tuning in for others. Remember, we leave the videos up if you want to revisit them and really learn some of these tunes that you haven't heard before. Then you'll have access to the stop and the rewind buttons.
And one thing that I'm hoping to figure out, I don't know how to yet, but I'm hoping to figure out is a way to come up with a list that we can post of what is played in each one of the videos. I don't know how as yet, but that's something I want to look into.
Yeah, Facebook doesn't give many options for organizing stuff in those albums.
But we can try. So it'll be like when Adam has on the red plaid shirt, it's in this, whatever.
We've tried not to rewear outfits.
Yeah, right.
For indexing purposes.
Yeah, well, we haven't indexed anything. Don Cucci has done
a
lot.
Yes.
He will post it on your page, right?
Yeah. In the chat for each video, sometimes Don has been kind enough to put a track list with actual time markers. So maybe you'll find that if you scroll through the comments.
Right.
All right, we're going to wrap things up with one more waltz for Lori and anybody else out there who's into waltzes. We like waltzes. I really like waltzes on the banjo.
This is a familiar waltz. For old-time players, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this one, but it's been around a long time. I feel like I encountered it in the contra dance community. Margaret's Waltz, and this is going to have the usual minor, the E minor shape, F sharp minor in actuality. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for joining us and playing along. Just wish we could hear you out there.
And everybody have a nice summer, and maybe we'll run into you.
Yeah, say hello at the festivals if you see us. All right, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Waltz. Hope you had fun with that one. Can picture the couples spinning around.
That's what I have to do, is
right?
to see them spinning.
Yep.
To keep the tempo going.
Absolutely.
There's one other thing I wanted to say about the Athens Festival, is that it's in October, which makes it a little more interesting in some
You might
ways.
see us here before
and
you
a
see us
little-
down there. We could remind
A little less
people again.
conflict with other festivals.
Right. Early October.
Yeah, first week in October.
Yep.
So,
Check out the
anyway.
Tennessee Valley Old Time Fiddlers Convention
Yeah.
if you're looking to add something to your event calendar. Thanks for tuning in here.
Feel free if you have any requests or things that you would like to see us do when we start back up.
Yep.
Drop Adam a line on
Reach out.
Messenger or whatever.
Let us know how we can improve this online old time jam
Well,
series.
technology, but we'll work on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we play music and don't do
That's
the
right.
computer thing.
That's right.
Unless we have to.
But we look forward to seeing you guys down the pike.
Absolutely. Cheers all.
Good
Take
night.
care. Bye.